I would like to welcome you all, welcome the students in the audience this evening. We have hopefully a number of high school students who are interested in careers in the psychology profession. We also have quite a few behavioral science students who are here with us this evening. So I would like to very much welcome the audience. There are a few guests that may be in this particular forum as well. So very much we welcome you tonight in that. I would also like to welcome our formal alumni, our panelists that we have with us this evening. We may have a number of other individuals who will be joining us, who are getting off work at this point in time and will hopefully be coming in within a few minutes. The individuals, the panel that we have here, it's comprised of, again, psychology alumni from FSU. All of these students, pretty much I've had Mike, I think Dr. Joe, my husband, had you. I don't think that I had you in class. No, I don't think so. And the other individuals that will be joining this evening and actually on Wednesday and Thursday as well, they are pretty much individuals that I know quite well. So this is like old home week for me, and I'm just really enjoying having you here. Unfortunately, virtually, I would love to have you in person, but this is the best that we can do at this point in time. This for the students out there. These particular panelists are individuals who have specialized, at least at this point in their careers and possibly throughout, in working with children, some with very small children, some with teenagers. And then we have a couple of individuals who actually work with teenagers and young adults in a higher ed setting. And one thing that's very interesting about that you'll hear in terms of social services, we can come from many different programs and find ourselves actually in reality doing very similar things in that. And for instance, what I would just like to and this is a way for you all to practice raising your hands and putting them down at this point. How many of you panelists have a social work background? Would you raise your hands? And can you raise? Okay, that's good too. That's good. That's fine, because what I was going to say, you could raise your little Zoom hand, but we're informal. It really doesn't matter to me. How many of you have counseling backgrounds? Have either been trained in counseling or you're working? Okay. So all of you in that. Is there anyone in the group at this point in time who has a different background, a different type of training? Okay, Cheyenne, what your background is in what?
Working with individuals with disabilities.
Okay, what we will probably have, and we will see this in the adult-based group as well tomorrow. You will also find a number of individuals who have begun their training working in special needs in those areas, rehabilitation counseling, as well as education. So this is another area. We'll have people in public administration who, once they find themselves in social service positions, may find themselves doing some very similar things from time to time. What I'm wanting the students to kind of get a sense is that there are so many directions that you can take this understanding of people. Your degree in psychology in many different directions. If you are wanting to go out and really work in communities and help in social service in those particular areas. So, just very much wanting to mention that to you. For you students who don't know me, I'm Dr. Ann Shaver. I'm a professor of psychology at Fairmont State. Dr. Nina Slota, right now she is personing the chat. I would like to mention to you, this is important, if you find, as I begin the formal Q&A period, If you have any questions that you would like to have addressed, please write those questions in the chat. And later on, toward the end of the evening, Dr. Slota will present. In all likelihood, she may not be able to present all of those questions because we really don't have quite as much time as that we really probably need. But she will try to address some of those questions at that point in time. The other thing that is very important for you students, if there may be some students out there who are here, hopefully for the interest of being here and learning about the various careers in social service and mental health, but you may also be here to collect a little bit of extra credit for the end of the semester. In order for you to do that, it is a must. What you need to do is you need to, you'll write down your name in the chat. You'll write your name as well as the one course that you would like extra credit in. You need to do that because that is the only way that we will be able to send those lists on over to your faculty. So make sure, please make sure that you do that for us. Another reason for the chat, if anyone finds that they're having some technical difficulty during this time, Greg Kramer, and Greg is an alumnus of psychology. He has been serving as our technical director. He is an IT specialist at WVU. So what they want to do at that point in time in the chat is specify, I believe, panel, not audience, but panel in your chat. And Greg will get back and hopefully address that issue with you. Okay, so I wanted to mention that. Now, what I would like to also do at this time is introduce some very special individuals. One individual who is with us this evening is Carolyn Canini. Carolyn is the West Virginia program. She's the director of mental health programs, and I'm hoping I'm getting that title exact for you. But in the nature, this is something she has a major role in the development of mental health in West Virginia right now, and at a very critical time. We very much appreciate having Carolyn with us. Carolyn has been instrumental. We were able, the behavioral science, we were able to acquire a work initiative grant, and Carolyn has been working with us on that, and her guidance and supervision has been instrumental. And we want to thank you for just for helping us with this project in that. I would also, and I do want to ask Carolyn, is there anything you would like to say right now? Just a few words, just a hi, anything?
Yes.
I'm putting you on the spot, I know.
No, I would love to. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Shaver, for having this event and for inviting us. I work at the Higher Education Policy Commission, and so part of my role there is around helping develop the behavioral health workforce, specifically the educational pipeline. For all of you students who are looking at, what am I going to do next? Am I going to pursue social work? Am I going to pursue one of these other degree pathways? And what do I need as far as licensure to do the career I want to do? That is all part of the projects that we work on at the Higher Education Policy Commission. So I'm super excited to learn alongside all of you all tonight. And I do have a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in social work. And so I feel like I'm in really good company with my comrades here and looking forward to hearing from everybody. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Carolyn. I would also like to take this time to introduce you to the director of alumni, our alumni center, and I would assume alumni services here at FSU. We have grown from a college to a university, so we have many, many new positions over time. Jeremy, this is Jeremy Hatcher, and Jeremy would like to take a few minutes to speak to you alumni about the Alumni Center.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ann, for inviting me. I really love when I have professors email me and give me a chance to talk to alums in a forum like this. But really this goes for all the students as well, because you'll all be alum someday. First of all, so I took over Alumni in 2019. It's been a kind of an interesting kind of time to be in alumni relations, because there's not a whole lot of bringing people back to campus. So the first thing is as alums of Fairmont State University, you have a free membership to the Alumni Association. And we are actually adding more to what that means in the coming years. But so you are an alum of Fairmont State. The most important thing that I like to tell alums is it's really a communication with. It's a two-way street. We want to make sure that we are sharing your story, and then also getting the information of what's going on campus to you guys. It's really important that we know what our alums are doing, the cool and awesome things they're doing, and then also what the university is doing and what you can help with. Things like these forums and other things that I see the university doing and bringing back alumni is so much of a greater resource than just somebody asking for money. I don't ask for money. I'm not a foundation rep. I want your story. I want to know what you're doing. If you go to the main way you can keep up with us is through our social media. We have Facebook, we have Instagram. I'm a terrible social media person, but I have people to handle it for me. LinkedIn as well. So we have a group on LinkedIn. But when doing that, keep up with what's going on campus, and then also share your story. If you go, we are actually updating our information on our website. One of the things you'll find on there is an alumni spotlight, and you can go read some cool things that other alumni are doing and what their experience was like at Fairmont State. The other thing on the website that you'll find is benefits. So one of the things that was really important to me when I started at Fairmont State is that we give alumni some benefits. So you'll see some things on there like some insurance perks, discounts on insurance, discounts on different translation services and things like that. So feel free to go and look at that and sign up for, there's actually one called Beneplace, which is great deals on computers and refrigerators and all that kind of stuff. There's one for tickets. It's amazing services, and it's all free. All you have to do is go sign up and put your email in, and you'll get all the information about it. So it's great. The other thing that you can do is there's a place for you to submit a class note. So if there's something going on in your life and you want to share with the university, we love to get that information in. If you're going to have a baby, if you're taking a new job, if you're getting a promotion, if you're retiring, if you know of a Fairmont State alum that's recently passed away, let us know, because we want to share your story with other alumni. And then lastly, we're starting a business network during COVID. COVID hit us pretty hard. So we're starting a business network. So if you know someone that owns a business and they can advertise on our website, we want to make sure that we support and also really identify those businesses that are owned by Fairmont State alumni. And then last, President Martin would kill me if I didn't mention homecoming is set right now, tentatively, for October 8th. And as always, the theme will always be welcome home. So we want to bring as many alumni back as possible, and there'll be more events and more information coming out shortly. If you have any questions for me, my email is my name with a period in between, that Jeremy and the Hatcher at fairmontstate.edu, or you can also email alumni alumni and friends at fairmontstate.edu. That's easier way, but both of those are ways of getting in contact with me. And also you can call the Alumni Center and they'll give you all the information you need. But yeah, I really appreciate you having me. And if you have any questions or anything, let me know. If it's okay with Ann, I'll probably jump off, if that's okay.
Okay, and Jeremy, I believe I will see you tomorrow evening as well?
Yeah, I'll be for all three.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. Okay,
right.
See you then. And thank you. Right. Oh, what I would like to do right now, I want to go ahead and start into our series of formal questions that have been developed by our students. Before we do that, I would like to take some time and have each one of you just tell me a little bit about what, just concisely, okay, be rather brief, but tell me, give us your job title, okay, tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit in terms of what you specifically do. And I think students would also like to know how did you kind of evolve into the position that you are in? I think sometimes what happens, people think, and I've heard this from time to time, individuals, the idea that you can't find a job without a job after psychology without the master's degree. You would be surprised how many of our students begin working in social service sometimes before they graduate from Fairmont State. And many of those individuals, while they're going to graduate school, or work a few years before they enter graduate school. That's very, very possible for individuals. I've had individuals, you're going to meet some individuals in the next, for anyone who is going to be in the adult service, adult-based professionals tomorrow evening with that forum, individuals who have immediately after psychology acquired their positions, and this is what they do. Okay, this is just, without going to grad school. I do want to mention, though, for psychology to work independently in applied areas, we certainly recommend graduate school for individuals, and most of our people eventually do certainly do that. But anyway, I'd like to go ahead and, I do want to mention this before. Laurie Mafini, who is our ASL interpreter today, Laurie she is an individual. She's a school counselor in the Marion County area. Okay, so Laurie fits right in with the group at this point. Laurie will be helping us tomorrow evening, and for the graduate information and experience sharing on Thursday, she will be with us at that point in time as well. So I'm speaking for Laurie. This is her first year, and I'm hearing she's learning many new things. And all I can say is, because of my own background, I was a school counselor and a school psychologist before I started working in community mental health. And my thoughts are Laurie would be priceless in a school setting, like all of you school counseling people here, because I know y'all well. Let me go ahead and move across the top row. And Stephanie, this is Stephanie Davis. Steph, would you take a couple minutes and share with us what you do professionally?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Ann. I'm Stephanie Emigenic. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's in social work. During graduate school, I worked at Chestnut Ridge. That's a psychiatric facility. I was on an inpatient unit as a mental health specialist. So that's something that I did while I was working towards my master's. But I have been a child therapist for the past 8 years. I've been in lots of outpatient settings, but for the past 3 years, I've actually been a child therapist in an elementary school. The school that I work in serves students that are in pre-K through second grade. So I specifically work with the little guys. I'm a licensed certified social worker through the state of West Virginia, and I just recently received my registered play therapy certification. So I do a lot of play therapy with students that I work with. And at the school, I provide a lot of individual therapy with students. I do some family therapy, and I go into the classrooms and do social emotional learning lessons. Thank you.
Stephanie, thank you. I just want you to know I just took down a note that I will be contacting you at some point to have you come and speak to my 4470 intervention course about play therapy. So we'll talk later. Okay.
Oh, okay.
No
I would love
pressure.
that. Thank you, Dr. Ann.
Okay, no pressure. All right. Next, I would like Jennifer Adams to tell us a little bit about her work. Jen?
Hi. Thank you, Dr. Ann. My name is Jennifer Adams. I graduated with my psychology bachelor's degree and went down to become into the program of clinical mental health counseling at Marshall, where I started working while getting my master's at Prestera. I worked at an alternative school running groups as a case manager for about 1.5 years, and then got promoted to therapist once I graduated with my master's. I was there for about 3 years before moving back to Valley Healthcare and here in Fairmont. And I worked there for about 3 years, working with children as young as 5, adults all the way up to their mid to late 60s. I have since moved from Valley and am now currently a psychotherapist at Mountaineer Psychological Services. And I still work with children as young as 5 years old, all the way up to, I believe my oldest client is in their late 60s right now. So, but I do see several children and I really enjoy working with everybody that I can.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Thank you. Hey, Jackie, tell us a little bit about you. This is Jackie Reed.
Hi, everyone. I graduated in 1994 with my BS in psychology from Fairmont State. I have a master's from WVU in counseling, and then I received the school certification as well. And currently I am taking classes towards my EDS at Marshall. So prior to going to graduate school, I held a temporary social worker's license and did some case management stuff. Finished up with my master's in counseling, school certified, and really worked as a school counselor in juvenile detention and public schools before making my way back to Notre Dame High School, which is my alma mater. So welcome, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Jackie mentioned that she's working on an EDS. An EDS is actually the terminal degree in applied school psychology. Okay, you can certainly go on and get a doctorate if you would like to teach school psychology, but this is the terminal degree if you want to become a school psychologist, either in private practice or in a school system in terms of doing that. Dr. Joe and I both also have an EDS. And I work as an educational consultant privately. So Jackie, we need good school psychologists out there. So good for you in that. I just want to mention to the school audience, on Friday, I know you have all of these links and I've mentioned this, but on Thursday, individuals will be coming back to talk about their graduate school experiences and what those particular programs will allow them to do. And that would be particularly, I think, advantageous for all of you, but very much for you juniors and seniors who are thinking about making use of that psychology degree in an applied way. So I hope you come back to join us at that time. Hey, Mike Baker, could you share with us what you do?
I'm Mike Baker. I'm the executive director of the Marion County Child Advocacy Center. We do forensic interviews for children between the ages of 2 and up to 18 who may be victims of physical abuse, sexual abuse, drug endangerment, exposure to violence. So we get the kids that the Department of Health and Human Resources may get a referral on. And at that point, they will refer to us. I'm a licensed forensic interviewer. I have a bachelor's degree. I graduated way back in '92 with a psychology degree from Fairmont State. And I kind of made my way through the ranks. I started working as a contracted employee in the detox unit in the Harrison County Correctional Center way back in 1988 when I was still in school, and then came up through Presley Ridge. At one point, I worked at Genesis Youth Center. I was the executive director of Stepping Stone, the boys group home. Before I've 13, going on 14 years now, I've been here with the Child Advocacy Center.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Hey, Mike, a question for you that doesn't, but I just want to mention this because I'm thinking of our students out there. Would you say that taking some CJ courses for some individuals because again, what I'm finding, a number of our students kind of blend their psych with corrections.
Right.
in terms of finding some really good applied positions. Would you recommend that for some people?
Yeah, I actually was just a few hours short of having I probably should have did a double major with criminal justice psychology, but yeah, my primary focus initially was was criminal justice. And as I got working with the justice system through the correctional facility, I made a determination at that point that I kind of wanted to favor the psychology route. But absolutely, I think 3 of the folks that work for me currently have some background with criminal justice through Fairmont State as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. And for you students with our, because our curriculum, our major has changed to the point that we do have much more flexibility in electives. I don't want to say it's easy, but it is more convenient now to blend. A number of our students actually decide on double majors. CJ is one, sociology is certainly another way to go. But I just want to mention that as you're hearing people talk in terms of their experiences. Hey, Kayla, this is Kayla Hill-Hacker. Would you share with us?
Hi, guys. Thanks, Dr. Ann, for having me. Okay, so I graduated from Fairmont State in 2014 with my bachelor's in psychology. I went right on to Marshall and did the clinical mental health counseling program there. I did not take my test right away to become an LPC. I just kind of worked. I did not work in my field because I got married that year. So I just kind of took some time off. And then I took my test and I actually got a job at Valley Healthcare System before I had my licensure. The job requirement was to be pursuing that. So I was able to start working there as an outpatient therapist. And then I took my national counselor exam in January and became an LPC, well, provisionally licensed professional counselor until I completed my supervision. And then I have had my full license now for a year. And so I worked at Valley until July of last year. And then I started working for Burlington United Methodist Family Services, super long title. But so I work with kids now. When I was at Valley, I worked with kids. I think my youngest was maybe 8 at the time when I was at Valley. And then clients is up to like 60s, like Jen said. Jen and I were actually therapists there together at the same time. And then now with Burlington, the focus is really on kids. My title there is a community-based therapist. I'm one of 2. There's only one other community-based therapist for Burlington at this time, and she's in Kaiser. They do have like therapists on campus, but community-based, there's not very many. So I see kids as young as 5. And then I do have adults because we work with programs like Right from the Start and Safe at Home. So Safe at Home is where the kids are still at their parents' house. They just kind of need some guidance on, safety and appropriate like parenting things. So I do have adult clients as well. So I'm still kind of working with a range, but I do build my caseload with foster care. So I have children that are currently in foster care.
Okay, thank you, Kayla. Thank you. Andrea, this is Andrea Pamer. Would you share with us?
Sure. Hi. Thank you also for having me. And it's great to see all these people that I haven't seen in a long time. Super excited. I guess we don't have a chance to chat, but it's nice to see you anyway. So my beginnings, also I graduated from Fairmont State in 99 or 2000. And I was a non-traditional student. That's also relevant. So I didn't go back to college until I was 26, but then was very focused and did it in 3 years. So something to be said for taking your time to decide what you want to do. But then after I graduated, actually while I was in undergrad, I started working for Dr. Pierce as a psychometrician, first as a practicum student, an internship, and then as sort of underpaid labor. And one thing that I think we all know in this field is that you put a lot of free labor or slave labor in but with passion, because it's so much fun to learn what we learn when we do these things. After I graduated, also actually while I was in undergrad as well, I became a CASA volunteer, and that's a great program. If that's something if you're not sure if you want to work with children that have been abused, that's a great way to explore that. It's a court-appointed special advocate program where you are assigned, at the time it was 2 to 3 cases where you work with children that have been taken from their homes, typically because of abuse and neglect. And you get to meet the children, you try to assess what's happening and what's best for the children. So you become a team member or a member of the multidisciplinary team, and you write letters directly to the judge advising what you think is best. So it was an incredible growing experience, because here I was as insecure undergrad, non-traditional, and in this environment where all these other professionals, and yet I had something important to say, and I had reports to write that needed to look reasonably professional. So it was a really good experience. And it also ignited my passion to working with children, which I did eventually, but I went on to Marshall and did the clinical psychology program. At the time, we had a traveling program, which was great. So I didn't have to go to Charleston for every class, but so it was a weekend program. Which was really good too. And while I was doing that, I worked at United Summit Center as an emergency therapist. So I got a lot of the harsh stuff experience while I was doing that. And I also worked for one of my professors at the Central Regional Jail in Flatwoods. I think that's the Central Regional Jail, as a aftercare specialist. So we worked with people that were repeat offenders and coming up with plans and helping them to not go right back into the prison system. So once I was done with my degree, I went into, well, first, when I was done with my degree, I thought, oh, shoot, what am I going to do now? I didn't want to work at the Summit Center anymore, and I went into private practice. My clinical supervisor was Terry Lorita at the time, now it's Terry Sigley, and she had met her. I'd seen her testify during one of the court cases as a CASA, and I was so deeply impressed by her professionalism and her passion for children that I just walked up to her afterwards and said, when I graduate, will you please be my supervisor? And she was first taken a little bit aback, but then eventually she called me and said, sure, I'll take you on. And she was really specialized in, at the time, there were still people doing sexual abuse evaluations. And that was really my passion, working with sexual abuse victims as well as sex offenders. Her view was that if you're going to do one, you have to do the other as well. So we worked a lot with the kids coming out of the inpatient unit for the sex offender program at Chestnut Ridge at the time that I don't think exists anymore. But that was incredibly gratifying work. Downside is it doesn't pay. You can't really make a living. So that's how I ended up working for the Gear Up grant as a statistician, because when I graduated from Marshall, I also had obtained a graduate certificate in behavioral statistics. So I was a statistician for the Gear Up program, and then a position at Fairmont State opened up as was a third career counseling, a third working with students with disabilities, and a third psychotherapist. And it was 10 months part-time. I made $13 an hour, but I took it. So, and I was pregnant at the time too, but that in the meantime, so what happened over the years, it grew into me at one time being the director of counseling services, health services, and accessibility services, which now in the last year was pared down to just counseling services, which is really a blessing because it's nice to be able to focus on one thing only. But it's been an incredible trip and a great field. Other things I did forget, I also was very close to becoming a school psychologist when I was at Marshall. I was 2 classes away, and I was in my internship at Ward County school system, and the school system just was not for me. I did not want to, I could not be part of the school system. So, but if you have what it takes to be in the school system, go for it. I think that, and as Dr. Shaver is absolutely right, we need a lot of good school psychologists. So yeah, that's my story. Oh, and I do also have the last couple of years, 2 years ago, I also obtained an LPC license just in case I ever want to leave the state, because one of the downsides of having just a master's in clinical psychology is that while I'm fully licensed in West Virginia, you can't go anywhere else and be fully licensed.
Okay. Andrea, thank you very much. As far with what you were saying about school counseling, I just want to mention I evolved. I don't want to say evolved, but I kind of moved from, again, working directly in school systems to eventually having a private practice. And what you'll find, you will find your niche. And I hope you all find, as you you graduate and you go on, that you will have a number of experiences in growth and with different populations and just different agencies or whatever, because it's certainly going to make you into who you are and who you will continue to become. Speaking of that, I would like to introduce you. Here's Heather McDonald Stoniker, and you'll get to hear about her interesting journey.
Hi, Dr. Ann. Thanks for having me. I always love when I can come back to home to Fairmont State. Like Jeremy said, this is my home away from home, and I always enjoy that. So my name is Heather. We can go Stoniker. Couldn't let go of that last name, had to hyphenate. But I got my bachelor's in psychology in 2002 from Fairmont State, and then graduated with my master's. Went straight into grad school actually in January of 2003, and graduated with my master's in counseling at WVU. And since I started part-time, I just wanted to jump right back in. I didn't want to take time off. I had some extra time, so I did both. Back then, I don't know if it's the same now, I did both community mental health track and the school counseling track. It was like 9 more hours, and it just seemed silly not to do it. And it's funny following Andrea, because after Andrea did psychological testing at Dr. Pierce's, I believe it was Amy Brown, and then Amy Brown trained me. And so I also did testing at Dr. Pierce's through grad school, and I feel like that was invaluable. So if you can do anything like that, especially a small practice, there were about 7 people total, and everybody made you a part of something and taught me a lot there. And then after my first job out of graduate school was in corrections at the West Virginia Industrial Home for Youth. I was the therapist and director of the admissions and orientation unit. And so I had youth offenders, I had the males from 13 to 21 when they first came in, and loved that, loved the residents. I am not a corrections person. I like rules, but I also like to look at the whole person. So I spent about 3 months there, and then got hired at Fairmont General Behavioral, Inpatient Behavioral Health. And I was there for 2 years as a therapist on the inpatient unit, and I loved it and worked with adults. And while working there, I got my LPC, so licensed professional counselor. And also when I graduated, I became a certified school counselor through the state of West Virginia, just took both those practice tests and all that to get it done. And then one summer, they were hiring 5 new school counselors in Harrison County. And I thought this seems like a great time to jump into that. But originally, I never, ever wanted to be a school counselor. If I did, it was never going to be little kids. And even my internship was high school, and little kids were not my thing at the time. And then I spent 13 years with little kids in Harrison County Schools of Big Elm. I stayed at the same school. I had pre-K through 5. I had 700 kids, and it was me, and I loved it, and built a program there. And then I was fortunate enough to have wonderful Kyra Burnett as my intern and my right-hand person last year. She was an intern, but she was really a counselor in residence, and she was a counselor. Don't let that intern fool you, because she was amazing. And then so I spent 13 years there, and just recently in October made a big transition to higher education, and I am the project director for the Collegiate Strategic Prevention Framework Partnership for Success grant through Marshall University Research Corporation Center of Excellence in Recovery. So basically, I'm working with prevention now, which working with littles, and there's only so much you can do before you start thinking, okay, how do we stop these kids from falling into the water? I'm tired of pulling kids out. And so when this prevention position opened up, and we're working with decreasing substance misuse among college students right now, and then they're taking that out into the communities. So for me, and for my area, just like a lot of West Virginia substance use is like just epidemic and ripping through these kids' lives. So I'm on the prevention end now, which has been great, working with student leaders on higher education campuses to do that work. In addition to that, though, I'm training in EMDR work for counseling, which I've loved using with trauma. I have a very small practice, and I basically do group work, which is funny because in grad school, I hated group work, and now my practice is just group work. And I'm a certified equine assisted psychotherapist in learning. So I do all my group work on a farm with horses as part of a team. I'm certified through EGALA. And I do grant work. I don't mess with insurance or any of that. And so I work with one of our grants we work with is Harrison County Drug Courts. And we've been doing groups with that agency. And they come, and we've done the last 3 springs and summers. And then actually just starting with Harrison County Schools, can't get away from them. But we are offering a grant program. It's called Altering Resiliency, and it's working with children, adolescents. We have 2 groups getting ready to go, with students in kinship care or foster care. And we're building resiliency skills, and that's our focus in those groups. And then I'm also a certified trauma and resiliency practitioner and trainer through STAR Commonwealth. I think that's it. So my youngest person I've ever done counseling with is 3 years old in one of our preschool. The oldest was a 94-year-old wonderful lady at Fairmont General, and everything in between. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Heather. Thank you. Okay, Cheyenne, would you share with us your journey?
Hi, my name is Cheyenne. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in 2018 in psychology. During my last semester of college, I did a practicum at the Disability Action Center. And at the end of that, I ended up getting hired on there as the job coach. And a few months later, I was promoted to be the life skills and career developer. So what I do is I primarily work with adults, but I also work with high school students as well, helping them get ready to transition from high school to the workplace. So I do one-on-one skills with them, and that can range from something like learning to tie their shoes to learning how to use the public transportation or how to interview for a job. We also teach a lot of classes down at our center. So we teach anything from our STEM related courses, working with robotics and stuff, to just group fitness classes and just educating them on how to live a healthier life. So it's my practicum definitely helped me, because I don't think I ever would have ended up there without it.
Thank you, Cheyenne. One thing that we really do in the psych department, we really want to promote are what we call the clinical practicums. Students can do actually up to 2 3-hour practicums, practicum 1 and practicum 2. This is a great way. Typically, you want to wait until that junior and senior year to get out there in those agencies and gather some experience. It's a great way to not only network, but to really learn some applied skills. So for you psych majors, please, for you people who want to go applied, more clinical, like the people you're hearing about today and we'll hear about tomorrow, think about eventually doing a practicum. Your advisors can very much help you make decisions on what agency or age, that you might want to kind of focus, or populations, whatever with that. But Cheyenne, thank you very much. Kyra, would you talk to us about what you're doing?
Yeah, hi. So my name is Kyra Burnett. I'm going to apologize. My dogs are a little rambunctious, but my name is Kyra, and I graduated from Fairmont State in 2018 with a bachelor's in psychology. And then I immediately went on to get my master's in counseling it's changed a little bit to a focus in school counseling. So I just had to take, I believe, 6 to 9 hours extra. So I have the same as a clinical mental health counselor, but you tack on those extra ones, and that gave me my certification for schools. I went in thinking I wanted to be a high school counselor, which many of us did. I think my entire cohort said we're all going for high school. My practicum was in a middle school, fell in love with it. It was in Fairmont, West Fairmont Middle School. And I decided then that I was going to be in middle schools. And then I went with Heather, and I began an itinerant school counseling position in Harrison County between Big Elm Elementary and Johnson Elementary. And that was the end of that. That's where I am now. I loved that position. I immediately fell in love with the kids as soon as I walked in the door. I never thought I would work with elementary, just like Heather had said. And I was pretty vocal about that. I was like, I love this job, but I'm not sure if I would, if I'm gonna like love it going forward. But I went into classrooms, I met the kids, and it was just kind of felt like my calling. It kind of hit me when I walked through those doors that was what I was called to do. And so I was a counselor in residence, which is where I got hired to do my internship that last semester. And I was very thankful to be hired back on into the full-time position. So I'm still itinerant between Big Elm and Johnson Elementary. And Heather was my supervisor that last semester, and I did get to spend a little bit of time with her this year. She is greatly missed. She was great at her job, and I think she taught me a lot of great things. Honestly, big shoes to fill, but doing great. So that's where I am right now.
Ira, thank you. It's really giving me an idea of how old I am. Or we could look at it in terms of how counseling has evolved quickly, maybe. I piloted the very first elementary school counseling program in Marion County. And at that point in time, most counties did not have an elementary program. And what a vital, I mean, it's so vital that the little ones are getting real good, high quality counseling services. So I'm just so glad. We are so blessed to have you all out there doing that. Hey, Jamie. Okay, tell us about what you're doing now. I do want to mention, Jamie is working outside the state. Pretty much everyone else that you're going to be hearing from, these are West Virginia people. So Jamie, welcome back. And tell us about what's up for you.
Thank you, Dr. Ann. Hello, everyone. So like Dr. Ann said, I am working right now in North Carolina as a foster care social worker 3. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology in 2018. And thanks to Dr. Ann, actually, I jumped right into my master's program through the University of Central Florida, and I graduate that in 2 weeks. After graduating Fairmont State, I went on to work in child welfare through Child Protective Services in Florida, Texas, and now North Carolina. Secondary trauma and compassion fatigue are huge in this work and in this line of work that I do. So this is not my end game. Eventually, I plan to work for hopefully the VA. I want to do trauma focused work and be a licensed clinician to work with our veterans and their families using like the EMDR and ART modalities of therapy. So, but right now, child welfare is where I'm at, and it's okay.
Okay, Jamie, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm here again right now, trauma. People, whenever you have a chance, you students out there to learn, more about what we're learning about trauma. This is so very, very important. But anyway, Jamie, thank you. What I'd like to do at this point, I want to go ahead and ask you, we'll go through a few of the questions that the students have for you. Okay. Why children? Okay, why kids? What was there a particular reason why you decided to work with children, or maybe the particular population of children or age of children that you are working with? Anyone, just kind of what we're going to do instead of formally raising the hand, just let me know. And who would like to talk about that first? Heather?
Yeah, I think for me, because I kind of went backwards a little bit, I did adolescents and then adults for a while. When I went back to children, especially the little ones, that was kind of dumb luck. That's the job that was open. That's the one I took. And I thought I'll be here till a high school job opens up, and never left till October, 13 years later. But I think for me, what I learned and what kept me there was, one, the gratitude. And they never have to say it. They never have to say thank you. You watch them do it. You watch them in a school setting. I guess we're lucky that I wasn't with them just 30, 50 minutes in a session. I watched them use the skills that we had just talked about an hour ago. Or I'm in the classroom doing a lesson, and we're talking about a situation, and Johnny raises his hand. He's like, Miss Doniker, that's like a hot reaction like you told us about, or we could do this, this, and this. So I think for me, a child's ability to, one, soak in that information. They're not set in their ways. Their brain is still so, it's still molding, it's still maturing, it still has all these neural pathways we can build. Even when we talk about severe trauma, if we get to it quick enough, we can reconnect, we can rewire, we can do all these interventions and build resiliency and build more pathways and strengthen that. So I think once I saw that, and I got in my setting, I got to see the interventions into practice. And then my favorite thing about kids, the most brilliant thing to me is once they get it, then they show their friends. And they're like, wait, do this. Miss Stonecker, and that became a slogan for a little while. Miss Stonecker said, and I was like, hey, let's not do that because I might say something that I don't want attached to my name. But I think that innate ability for a child, it's like Plato's cave. They go into the darkness, they see the light. They're not coming back out. They're going to take the light to everybody else in their circle. And in my experience so far, that's such a kid, young adolescent thing that I haven't experienced in an adult setting. So for me, it was that.
Okay, thanks, Heather. Anyone want to add to that? Anything, Jamie?
So I would just add that one of the reasons that I went to work for Child Protective Services is because children are our most vulnerable population, right? And they need a voice. And for me, it was just seeing some of the trauma that these kids have been exposed to, and just knowing that I can make a difference being an advocate for them and being their voice, whether it's in the courtroom, in their home, wherever it is. But they're often unheard and unseen. And for me, my biggest motivation was bringing them out to where they are seen and they are heard, and they can scream their truth at the top of their lungs through me if need be. So that's why I went into child welfare.
Okay, one more, anyone? Anything? Oh, okay, Jen?
Well, I will say, of course, I started out in a different program than psychology. I was in elementary education, so I always wanted to work with children. There's just something about that population that it does have that innocence to it. It has that wonder to it. And for a child to be able to learn something new and be able to apply it to life situations, whether it's a positive or a negative situation that they can turn into a positive, it really does bring, joy to me, and I think even parents and teachers, to see a child that's been struggling to turn things around. So
okay. My next question, a student asked, would you say that there are particular skills that it really takes to be successful with children in doing what you do? Attributes, skills. Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that you can learn from a textbook. There's so much you can learn from classes, but you've got to be able to bond with kids. In what I do, I meet these kids for the first time in the waiting room, and just as a kind of a poignant exercise that I do when I try to explain to the community of what it's like to do these forensic interviews with these kids who have been sexually abused is, we ask folks to close their eyes and think about the last time they had sex, and people chuckle and they laugh and they're uncomfortable with that. Then I ask them to turn around to the person to their left and tell that person every single thing about that event. And that's what we ask these kids in many cases to do. We ask them to talk about some of the worst, most horrific, horrible things that have happened to them. And in order for that child to feel comfortable with you, you've got to be able to understand and to read what's going on, what's happening with that child. You have to be able to match whether they're sad, they're excited, they need to have somebody just to calm them down. So developmental psychology was very instrumental in what we do. We need to know if a child's on track, if they're able to verbalize what has actually happened to them. We have dolls that we use, if not. But the key is that initial rapport that you have to have with that child. If you're unable to form a rapport with that child, they're probably not going to tell you anything, and they're certainly not going to tell you everything. So I would say that would be the most important thing to do. What we do is to be able to understand where that child is coming from, and to meet them where they are, and to be able to develop a rapport with them in a very short amount of time.
Okay. As you mentioned, the importance of developmental psychology. Again, Dr. Slota, she's on audio right now, but I'm sure she had a smile on her face. She teaches developmental, and it's very, very important. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Mike. Anything else that you can think of that you might add to that? Okay. All right. The next question, what would you consider to be a particularly difficult aspect in working with kids? What's hard about it? Kyra?
For me, this past year has been very difficult learning because of the pandemic. So I've had a lot of different aspects. So we didn't have kids, we kind of had kids, now we have kids all back. I think one of the hardest things for me recently has been that shift of now I'm seeing the like post-COVID things that they've gone through. And like there was a day where I think I made 3 calls to DHHR. There was a day that I made 2 referrals out for outside counseling. And I just remember feeling like this is the new normal. I knew that was going to come, but I think just knowing that these kids that I love and care about are going through very heavy, hard things. Like it's not little humans, little problems. It's little humans, normal, big problems. And that was, I think, probably the hardest thing for me to get recently, was to just kind of separate myself sometimes from that. Because I do love and care about them so much, and it's very hard to listen to the things that they go through that a lot of people don't realize these little kids are going through.
Okay, all right. Andrea?
I think I put it in the chat, but I also found when I worked with younger children, mostly the most frustrating part was that there's so much you can do with the children, and you can equip them with so many skills and coping mechanisms, but ultimately they're stuck potentially for another 15 years where they are. And that powerlessness, knowing that you cannot change your environment, and unless parents are really willing to work alongside with you, that things may not get better. At different times felt very frustrating, almost like a travesty to me. Like I'm trying all I can, but I'm sending you back to a place where it really doesn't matter. You can only survive for another 15 years or 13 years. And that was very hard for me. So I like working with young adults because they have a little more agency. Okay. So I think it takes a special kind of person that has a resiliency within themselves to tolerate knowing there's only so much I can do, but that's also everything that I need to do.
Okay, thank you. Kayla, were you going to say something?
Yeah, it's actually funny because I was going to piggyback off of Andrea's comment in the chat box. So when I was at Valley and I had adults and children, a lot of the times we're working with the kids on like how to deal with their environments because of things that they can't control. And now that I'm in with Burlington and it's foster care, sometimes it's really upsetting because I can only do so much with the kids, and we can only do so much trauma work at one time. I mean, we can't just like pull the Band-Aid off and rip everything out all at once. And so we kind of do things incrementally, and then foster parents see behaviors, and sometimes, even if they do understand trauma, the behaviors are hard to handle. And then these kids disrupt from foster homes. And I have been at Burlington since July. And since that time, I haven't had a lot of kids disrupt, but I've had issues that had we not worked on this and fixed this, then they could have. I've had one that really disrupted, and then they're gone. I didn't get to talk to her again. I didn't get to see her again. Like, it was really hard. And with adults, they make these choices. They have a lot more choice in what they're doing and where they go. And the kids don't really have as much freedom with that, especially once they're in foster care.
By your response, it made me think of a question that I get every semester in intervention. Students will say, I'm really afraid that I'm going to break down and cry in a session. Okay, so my question, one thought is, what would your response be to them now? I see a smile on Heather's face and Kyra's, but what would your response be? Because they're afraid. It's like, I'm afraid I'm going to be ill-equipped because I won't be able to, control my emotions. Okay, your comments now.
So personally, I feel like it's normal for us to have emotions. I would say that we're not like breaking down and sobbing in session with the client, but like tears or just teary-eyed, even if a few slip out, I think that's okay because they can understand that we're being empathetic, like we're really putting ourselves in their shoes, instead of just being like, oh, I'm here to just like take notes and write a paper about you once you leave. So I think that emotions are normal for us. I mean, we all still have feelings and we have to take really good care of ourselves. I think almost everybody has kind of hinted to the fact that it's really taxing at times to work with kids, just because they are little people and they don't have much control over what goes on in their environment. And it's easy to be like, oh, I want to like protect you and do whatever I can to help you, but sometimes we're really limited.
Okay, Heather?
And I was smiling because I think it's funny because you think that and you worry about that, because especially for a little, it depends on the kid. Most kids are gonna like put their hand on your shoulder and be like, all right, like they're gonna have your back. But if they're too little, it could, it depends on the kid, it could freak them out a little bit. But I think what I would tell any students that, one, that's a completely obviously valid fear, and if it happens, you process it. You work with your client or the child, and you say, especially if they notice it. 9 times out of 10, a 5-year-old's not going to notice tears in your eyes. They're just going to keep going with their life because that's their moment. And in a school setting especially, kids don't have moments like that to just have the ball in their court, be completely in control. The rule in my office was, when you walked in, this is your office. I was like, just if you can stay away from my files and my computer, everything else is yours. As long as you're safe and we're safe, you're in control. Stay and sit. You don't get that at school, so they're gonna like latch onto that. But I think the reality is, for me anyways, you're so focused on what is my purpose in this session? How can I be here for this child? And that is where I, like, when things got hard, when those stories get detailed and devastating, my thought has to be, I have to be in this moment here and now. I can't worry about that yet. I have to worry about this little one and what they need from me. What they need from me is a listener and to hear their story. And I think it was Jamie who said if they've got to shout it to the rooftops, this is where they have a voice. So I think that part takes over. Now, they might leave and I might have a breakdown, and that's fine and that's normal and that's healthy in some respects. Or I might call up to the office and say, hey, I'm going home. I need a break. And we have to be able to do that. But I think that students will be surprised when you're in that. If you can keep your mind and it's easy to do that. I think when that little face is across from you, you're just in it with them. And so I think that's what I would tell a student. You'll be surprised at how you'll be in that moment with that child. And then once they leave, then you decompress, you debrief, you lose it, whatever you need to do for you.
Okay. Andrea?
I'd like to just add on to that. One of the things that helps me, and when I work with our interns as well, is to think of it as remembering that we're witnesses to their story. It's not our pain. We're just there to witness it and help them hold it and work with it. And I think that's really important to establish healthy boundaries quickly. And I do think working with children is a great way to do that, because it's definitely more challenging when you have little people and you're in an adult role and you think about, oh my God, how could somebody do this to this person? So I think that the temptation to identify with the child and the perpetrator or whoever's inflicting pain is much greater, but it's also a great catapult into establishing really good boundaries.
Okay. I've got a related question. How do y'all keep from bringing it home with you? How do you do that? Jamie, CPS, talk to us.
So for me, I had to set very strong boundaries in place with myself. I might get a case 10 minutes before I'm ready to walk out the door, and my supervisor's like, hey, read this case real quick. We're going to assign it to you tomorrow. And you're just floored after that 10 minutes of reading that intake. And you're like, what just happened? And for me, I have to remember that my job is to be there for those kids when they need me and for those families. But I also have to be here for myself and for my family. When I walk out that door, I need to be here for my kids. I need to be present in that moment. So for me, if I have to take a few minutes at the end of the day to call a coworker or a supervisor and be like, I need to get this off my chest before I go home. Like, my ride home is going to be talking to you so that I can leave this at the door. You just have to really practice doing that. And it's hard because those stories, that trauma that weighs on your mind. But you really have to work on setting those boundaries and just leaving it at the door.
Sure. Anybody else? I'm sure you've gone through it. Anyone? Mike?
I got fat fingers today. I'm sorry. No, I completely agree. I have a ritual when I walk out my door. When I turn the key, I just have to compartmentalize what happened in this office, and what I heard is going to stay there. And I'm human as much as the next person. You see kids that are the age of your kids developmentally, or they're doing or participating in things that your kids are doing. And it's really hard sometimes to just turn that off when you flip that key. But I think it's going on close to 30 years I've been working in this field. And you have to be able to develop some of those healthy skills in order to just deal with it when you go home, or you're not going to last with it. We try to sit down with our interviewers here and give everybody an opportunity to decompress and to talk about something. My phone is on. I have 3 employees. My phone is on 24/7. They can call me at any point if they're up late at night because they can't sleep, because they're thinking about something that they talked to a child about. So there's things that you do for self-care, but there's also things that your employer should be doing. Someone talked about secondary or vicarious trauma earlier. And that's one of the things that I think is so important for you to be able to do 20, 30 years in this field. So I'm glad that was mentioned.
Okay. Anyone else in Kyra?
So when I was in grad school at WVU, they kind of hammered self-care into our heads. We had to show them what we were doing each and every week. We had to write a reflection on it at the end of the year. And that has kind of saved me, honestly, this year, because I kind of set in stone a ritual after work where I either blare music or I call my mom, and I kind of just take that time to just decompress. And then once I get out of the car and I get home, I kind of just leave it there. So I take that time to decompress. How did the day go? What do I need to do tomorrow? And I do that every day so that I can leave it. And then when I get out of the car, I just know that this is home. That's not work. I need to focus on what's here instead. So I set a ritual because that's what helps me the most. And that was my best form of self-care.
Sure. Self-care is vital. Anybody else? What do you do for self-care? Anybody want to share?
I have to get outside, whether it's a hike, bike, run, walk, stand on the front porch. And something that we do, my husband and I both, when we pick our son up from school, is what helps me switch is tell me about your day. And it's the same. It's been the same for 10 years now. Why do you want to know? Because I wasn't with you. Tell me about your day. Who'd you have lunch with? What was your favorite class? What'd you learn about? So I think that helps. My husband's a first responder, so we both have to find a way to do that. So I think that too, refocusing that, but we do a lot of I think when you can be outside, that's great. And I think that's one thing I like about equine assisted therapy that I've been doing. Like, it's all outside, and it's just like, so even within the work, I'll stay for an extra 15, 20 minutes after a session, and I'll hang out and put the horses back or whatever. So I think for me, outside is really helpful.
All right. Okay, I have a question regarding child behavior problems. Are you noticing changes in the intensity of our kids changing in relation to behavioral issues? Are you noticing changes from the time you started working? And when I say children, kids and teens, because, are you noticing our children, our behavior problems worsening? Jackie.
I don't know if it's as much as behavior problems worsening as the presence of social media and this need to be a, certain type or fit into a certain, I don't know, a certain stereotype. It's become very interesting from the time I started as a school counselor in 2003. Really, I will share one really great thing at Notre Dame. What we do is our kids can't have their cell phones. They're locked in this was pre-COVID. They're locked in a cabinet. So obviously we know we have students who sneak their phones in, but for the most part, those phones being in the cabinet alleviated so many issues that we were having prior. Again, the social media, this person said this about me on Facebook and in third period. So now in fifth period, I have 6 girls in my office. That has been a game changer. But I think most of all, just social media and just the influences of, the Kardashian generation, so to speak.
Okay. Anyone else? Andrea?
I'm piggybacking on Jackie. I don't see, of course, I work with young adults, but what I'm noticing over my years working with young adults is that there's definitely almost, I want to say, an encapsulation. They're less interactive or in different ways interactive. Like when I used to love giving classroom presentations because kids would actually interact and be involved. And I have deep respect for professors now because I think, and I'm assuming, I think it may be a side effect of the social media, being on your phone a whole lot. The interaction, in-person interaction has really decreased among, whether it's in group settings or among students. And I'm not 100% sure it's an awful thing. I think it's every once in a while, I think maybe we're in this generational wheel where we always think life's going, the world's going to hell in a handbasket after us, but they've got this figured out anyway. But that's something I've noticed, that there's less outwardly going on, but yet inside, whenever I read the evaluations for any presentations I do, as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, oh my God, they're bored, they're not paying attention, they're half asleep, but then they're very thoughtful comments and feedback. And so I know, there's inside, nothing's changed, but the outside connection seems to have changed a good bit. I'm not sure if anybody else sees that.
I'm hoping, Doug, I'm hoping that Dr. Joe joins us. He's hoping to get here before you all leave. He wanted to say hi. But again, he teaches physiological psych, and his concern, and I mean, the research very much reflects just the idea that because of this reliance on social media, maybe we are seeing some internal changes, in terms of distractibility, as well as just in terms of, I know Heather mentioned just the plasticity of the brain and how great it is that little ones can mold and all of that. Well, there's good in that. And the unfortunate part that, our brain is very sensitive to our experiences, and we are getting very few social experiences in terms of that direct type of stuff. So he's very concerned about that. Okay, I have, here's a question for you. What do you professionally envision for yourself in 10 years? Anyone want to go with that one? Any thoughts? What you might envision? Andrea?
I will go for it. First of all, closer to retirement, but that's not really a thing, because one of the great things about this field is I can totally envision myself doing this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I don't know many, I don't have any colleagues that don't feel the same way. I think those people that don't love this get out very early on, and those of us who do can envision doing this until the day we drop dead. But I also think one other great thing about this field is there's so many options, so many directions you can go at any given time, whether it's private practice or switching to prevention or substance. I mean, the possibilities are almost endless. So I don't really know what I'm going to do in 10 years, but I know it's going to be in the field.
Okay. Anybody else? Any thoughts, Jamie?
Just to kind of piggyback on what Andrea was saying, there are so many options in this field. You're not confined to this limited little box. Like, you can explore so many different things. Like right now, for me, it's child welfare, but in 10 years, I plan on working with veterans, and who knows, I might end up, that might not be my niche. And there's so much more that I can explore, whether it's substance abuse, being a licensed clinician, going into the school systems. There is so much to do. So who knows? I mean, the opportunities are there and endless.
Okay. All right. Anyone else on that? Jennifer? Jen?
Well, of course, like some of my big goals I've started accomplishing. I am in private practice now and have my licensure. But over the next 10 years, I really would love to go back and get my PhD in counseling, just to become a little more well-rounded, and then eventually not only continue to practice and hone in on my skills, but also become a teacher at a university to help bring the next generation of counselors up into this world. So.
Okay. I have another question. Can any of you identify a turning point in your career, an experience or something that led you to where you are? Any kind of just a significant moment, a turning point, an event? Heather?
I can, for me personally, in education, if anybody's been following the last few years, let me preface this. I have an amazing support system at Big Elm. I mean, I don't know that when I was there, hopefully it hasn't changed. Kyra, let me know if it has. I'll make some phone calls. Hopefully it hasn't, but I had super counselor-friendly staff, extremely counselor-friendly principal and assistant principal at the time. There's been some shifts there this year. To the point where I had a principal, I was like, hey, I'd like to try this group. She's like, do it. No, go ahead. And I, the teachers, when they see it working, they're going to let you in their room anytime you want to come in and try different things. You got to, one thing I'll tell any student out there, counseling is great. I fell into it a little bit because I don't like math, but then I quickly learned data and statistics. If you don't keep data, you're not going to be able to show program effectiveness. And no matter what you do, and now I'm in charge of a project where I got to do my data to the federal government. It's like, oh, what did I do? But I've learned to love it because I see change in the numbers. And that might sound crazy, but it does, and it works. So data, please don't underestimate the importance of that. But for me, in 2017, the teacher strike was very pivotal in the beginning of my exit from the school system. And I hate that because I had a great setup. I had support, I had people, but I had a real internal struggle with, I had a group and it was necessary and I saw the need for it. So it was hard because I knew what the fight was for. But the counselor in me had an ethical obligation to those kids to make sure their needs were met. And how do I get into my building, be with my kids, but support my staff who also I need to help support? And how do I reconcile that? And how do I do that ethically? Because there's some ethics involved with that. I was fortunate that Dr. Manchin said, we're not making that decision, no school. So that helped, but I was constantly preparing for the day when there was a strike, school was in session, and those kids who are my clients, essentially, I have to provide that service ethically speaking. Now, I will say I had amazing teachers that said, we understand that, don't worry about that. And I heartfully believe they would have. But I felt very out of control with that. And then we had a little repeat the next year. And I was like, I'm having a hard time somebody dictating when I can go in and do my job. And to me is an essential, vital service. And then we had the pandemic. So then it's like I had boom, boom, boom. And in 2018, I started thinking, if I want to be versatile, I need to grow in this profession. And so that's when I started I did Emdr training. I was certified through EGALA. I started with becoming certified in trauma and resiliency practitioner and then trainer. So I started like, what avenues, how do I make myself marketable? And this was like pre-pandemic, and then it just kind of evolved into that. So for me, that's the strike and feeling that somebody was dictating my job was very difficult for me, and kind of led to my foot out the door, so to speak, for the school system specifically.
Anyone else have an experience, an event that just affected you? Jamie.
So I used to want to do what Mr. Baker does. I wanted to work in forensic interviewing until I sat through my first one. And it was a horrific case. And I sat through that forensic interview and I watched what they did and how they did it. And while I have so much respect and appreciation for how they do their job, for me, that was like, just kidding. I never want to be a part of that and to be that person. So for me, I didn't have something that set me on my career path, but something that set me off of a course that I was going to go down, because I was able to witness that and be a part of that. I knew that just wasn't for me.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone on that? Stephanie?
Dr. Ian, you helped me find my path. I don't know if you remember, but I had Dr. Ian as a professor, and we had to do a persona project. And my favorite animal is a turtle, and I carried around this huge, gigantic turtle across Fairmont State's campus for like a week. And I was nervous to present, and Dr. Ann was like, I watched you carry this turtle, and you're going to do that. You're going to have to get up in front of the class and do this, even if you don't want to. So I did. And at the end, she asked to speak with me, and she told me, you have to work with kids. And I was terrified. I wanted to work in an inpatient setting with individuals that had severe psychiatric issues. That's what I wanted to do. I had a job at Chestnut Ridge. I was like, I have my plan. And that conversation with Dr. Ann completely changed my life. And it opened my world to children. And I don't know, like, I'm a registered play therapist. I got to learn about play therapy. Her conversation encouraged me to go down that path. And I couldn't see myself doing anything but working with kids right now. So I guess my piece of advice would be, listen to your professors. They sometimes see things in you that you don't see in yourself. So thank you, Dr. Ann, because I wouldn't be where I am today if that conversation wouldn't have happened. So
so all you students out there, hear what Stephanie said, okay? Listen to your professors. Heather.
Oh, nope, sorry, I was just scratching my head.
Okay. All right, anyone else on that one? Okay, I do have, again, tonight is our night. We're working out some bugs for the next two nights. First of all, this is, our intention was to go until 7 o'clock. We're not finished at this point, but I am going to cut it a little short because normally in a 3-hour class or something, we would be taking a break, which isn't really feasible doing what we're doing tonight. So I have a couple questions, and then I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Slota to check on if there are any questions coming from the chat. The last two questions, and I'm really interested in this coming from you people out there doing what you do. Service delivery during the pandemic. Things had to like turn themselves on their head for you. What changed? And the one thing is, what changed? And do you see some things permanently changing because the pandemic happened? Okay. Anyone? Cheyenne?
So I know for our clients, COVID was really difficult, especially when it first started out, when we were all at home. They got very depressed, sleep schedules completely flipped. They just had a really hard time, and it's really hard for some of the clients that we work with. They didn't understand why they couldn't come to the DAC. They would argue with their parents, I'm not sick, so why can't I go? And that was really hard. And I know it was really hard for the parents too. So for us, we had to really get creative. And luckily I have a very creative boss, and she'll do anything for our clients. And we came up with the idea called our Dac Connection Kits. So we have a full calendar of events. And when that idea rolled out, we were still working in our office. So it was just about before we all had to close down and go home. And she's like, we're going to put something together and we're going to get these kits out to the clients. And we gave them everything that we would be covering that month. If it said we had a gardening class, we were sending them soil, we were sending them planters, we were sending them everything they would need with videos to be able to complete those lessons. And for some of them, they didn't get on there because they wanted that in person. But for others, their parents said it cheered them up so much because they still got to see our faces in some capacity, because they were used to, well, today's, line dancing. I want to go dance with my friends. So, I mean, we really had to get creative in that. And the clients were really good sports about that. And, we still are not fully back to, completely normal, but they just go right along with it, and they're so resilient. And that's what we've really focused on this year, is that they're the most resilient people that you'll ever meet. And we're rolling with it, and they're rolling with it. And most of our clients are back now, and they're happy. They're following the guidelines better than probably anybody I've ever met. They take it very seriously because they know what life was like when the DAC was closed. And they don't want it to go back to being closed, but that's kind of how we tried to keep everything going in whatever capacity we could for them, just to make their lives easier and their parents easier as well.
Okay. Andrea?
I do think Cheyenne has a really good point. I think we're all in all much more resilient than we give ourselves credit to. That we give ourselves credit. And I also think that us, what we role model as grown-ups to our young people is going to play a huge role. And people have gone through wars and really horrendous circumstances, and while in the short and medium term there were certainly some after effects, I think all in all, if we take care of each other and we are good role models and we show them the way that, this is different, but it's also good, I'm very hopeful that things are going to go back to normal, if not even better perhaps. Of course, then there's this other side of me that sees everything's going horribly wrong, and we're all going to have microchips implanted, become remote controlled robots or something. But I don't actually believe that. So.
A number of us just returned from a state counseling conference, and I know in one of the workshops, a statistic that what they're finding. Close to 70 to over 70% of Americans are really unhappy, okay, and I mean are in a real place, at this point in time, and you could tie that into depression, whatever. But using the word unhappiness more so than this is something since the pandemic, and probably prior. It's been a very unsettled time. I'm just wondering personally, any sharing here on just dealing with your own, because I know personally this has been very difficult. The anxiety, the fear, mine even stretched back politically. I mean, just going, just in my clients, just a political PTSD, just that, in working with clients that, and then the pandemic hit. And any sharing on what you've done to, again, back to self-care, or anything that you might want to share about that? Heather?
I think for me, especially being in the school setting, and I was in elementary. So in our county, our students did not have devices. So when they went home in March 17th, day before, or, right before St. Patrick's Day, when they went home, they were home. And there, I mean, I remember like 2 weeks, like this. I think for me, that was the most anxiety provoking thing. Like, oh, it's going to be 2 weeks. Okay, I can catch up on this and that and whatever. So like for the first 2 weeks, I was like, I was solid. And then I'm like, again, first responder husband's like, it's so spread in Clarksburg, and it's, because he's on this other end of it. So we had that. So I have a son at home who loves his school, has loved school from day one. So he is all like, my friends and this and that, and what about dad coming home? What's he gonna do? What are we gonna do with that? And it was like hazmat at the door, and so we had to personally, as a family, like okay, this isn't working. 2 of us are gonna have panic attacks, and one of you is exposed every other day, 10 times a month. So we had that as a family. So we had to, and my son's an information seeker. The more information he has, the more he can process it. So we had to do a deep dive, and we had to learn, what are we up against? What do we need to do? What are the protocols? Like, so we did that as a family. So once we kind of got that, then I'm like, what am I doing? What I don't know what to do. Kyra, how do you video something? This was the best time though for me to have a counselor in residence who was finishing grad school, because she's like, oh, we could do this and we could do that. And I'm like, thank you. Because I felt like so out of sorts as what am I providing to my students? And that really hit me hard. Like I started, we got up on teams and we started doing individual sessions. When that was talked about 15 years ago in grad school, like telehealth, I was like, nope, don't want anything to do with that. I still feel that way. Sorry. This is better than nothing. But for me, I need to see a whole little person. I need to know if my one little guy that I did stuff with, I couldn't see his feet. If I can't see his feet, I don't know what's going on with him. Because I couldn't. So we, just starting to provide lessons, and I thought, what are they maybe dealing with? And Kyra taught me forums, taught me how to reach out. Thank goodness, for the first time I had another counselor too. I hadn't had a counselor in 12 years with me at my school, so it was always just me. So it was kind of great timing for that. So we did meditations, guided meditations, visual things. Tell me about your day, like anything and everything. And so the flip side of that, once I navigated a little bit, still not the same, but got to a point where I wasn't a panic attack every other day. Then I found this silver lining of, oh my gosh, this kid who I know, but is so quiet in class, is giving me the most comments on my lesson, and we're having a discussion. Yes, it's virtually, or yes, it's through chatting. I've had this kid 5 years, and this is the most engaged. So I would love to see them be able to use their devices within the classroom, within that lesson. If they're too uncomfortable verbalizing it, shoot me a text, chat me on Schoology, and still be part of the lesson. So I found that when kids have school anxiety pre-pandemic, or that social phobia, or just that insecurity, whatever it is, this is a comfort zone for them. So why don't we incorporate the strengths of them in that? And so there I really thought, oh, here it is. Here's where I can breathe and see, okay, is it normal for me? No, but I'm reaching and having discussions with kids that I hadn't. So then self-care, I reframed and I refocused and realized, okay, I may not be able to do all these things, but look at what I'm getting to do that I don't think would have happened otherwise. So I think that reframing constantly and navigating it, like, nope, masks again, or nope, going backwards a little bit, and just kind of going with that as it comes. But I think that reframing for me was everything.
Sure. Any other pandemic, any sharing just in terms of our jobs are tough. I mean, burnout on a good day, we have to be very in terms of self-care. And I'm just wondering any strategies, anything that got you through or is continuing to get you through. Kayla.
I kind of wanted to touch on both the questions that you had asked. So like the changes that came with telehealth, I think part of telehealth is going to be permanent. There are going to be some folks who that's what they want to do. We did have to get creative with the kids to get them interactive. Some of them, again, did not have internet access. Like Heather was saying, when the kids went home, they didn't have devices. So some of the kids didn't even have that as an option because they don't have internet. So then we kind of had to work with that aspect of things and how we get them involved when they can't even see us and it's just audio. So I do use a lot of different things. Of course, I use Pinterest and then I use Therapist Aid, and they have interactive tools. If you subscribe to them at all, you can have interactive tools, and there are games which are great for kids. Not a lot of things, but there are good things to get them involved and get them thinking. And then personally, my husband also works for Burlington, and he is a treatment coordinator. And so bringing our jobs home is a very real thing because we were working in the house and together in different rooms, and we share kids as well because I'm a therapist and he's a treatment coordinator. So he links them to people like me. So, we kind of have like a very small window of time that we give ourselves to talk about our cases and to get that out, because of course we can't spend all day talking about those things because we're both doing different things. So very limiting on what we can talk about and when, and like, if I can't do it right now, I can't, being able to communicate with each other and say, I can't do that right now. I can't deal with this because I have this other kid that's having even more problems. Like I just kind of prioritize some things. And then definitely, like Heather was said again, getting outside, and in winter that was really difficult. So love that spring's coming around, but even forcing ourselves to go out in the winter was an important part of that, even though we don't like the snow as much as we love sun, but we did it anyway. So those were just a few things that we did.
Okay, thank you. What I would like to do right now, Dr. Slota, looking through the chat, do you have a couple questions that you think might be good to be addressed?
Yeah, and I'm the techie. Okay. Yes, we got some really good questions. Some of them focus on the training and the differences between all the different fields, and some of them are more general. So I tried grouping them, but we'll see if that worked or not. Okay, so the first question was, what is the difference between a community-based therapist and a clinical counselor? And I think this question came up while you all were introducing yourselves. So somebody probably said community-based therapist and somebody probably said clinical counselor, and that's where the question came from, if context helps.
Kayla, or go ahead, Dr. Slota, you take over. Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
So my job description is community-based therapist, and I think that has to do with the organization that I work with, because they have residential therapists as well. So I think that difference in title comes with the organization. And then like when I was at Valley, I was an outpatient therapist, so it was based on what particular program I was working in. And then for like clinical, I won't say that I know all of that, but I'm going to say it's like your degree. It's kind of like your background. So like I do have clinical mental health counseling, so I could probably consider it a clinical like therapist at another job. It's just the title that I was given with my organization.
Thank you. Anybody have anything to add to that one? Okay.
I would just like, I just want to go ahead and say, typically, there's not much of a difference. It's going to depend, like, you know, it's going to depend on what your agencies call you, oftentimes, in terms of clinical, community, whatever. Similar people are doing the same thing. It's just really the names that they're using.
Okay. And then the next question is, what are some of the differences in schooling and experiences between school counseling versus counseling kids? So like if you're in an agency counseling kids versus school counseling, what's the difference in education? What's the difference in the kinds of things you're doing? That kind of stuff.
Just because I've done both. As far as education, so when you want to do school counseling, you just need to make sure, especially with, I'll talk about the state of West Virginia because that's what I know. But so when you go to apply to be certified school counselor with the Department of Ed, you have to fulfill certain requirements. So you'll have to take your praxis and you'll have to take the content area of school counseling. So, and you'll also have to, there are certain classes that you need to have at a graduate level for that. Now that, again, this was 2004 or 5. So some of those may have changed, but always check on that. So if you're thinking school counseling, go to the Department of Ed website and look at those, what the requirements are, and then compare that with the program. So for community counseling, or what we call mental health counseling is what it was called back when, but for me to sit for the National Counselor exam, which is a prerequisite for licensure, you had to come from a KCREP accredited program. So again, when you're looking at programs, look at the licensure you're thinking about going for and make sure it fulfills those requirements. Because you can't sit for the exam if you don't have certain things, and if you don't take the exam and pass, you can't work towards licensure. And that goes for both school and clinical work, counseling. And as far as the differences, and I think this would depend on agency too. So, but as a school counselor, you have a multifaceted delivery system, and we work on what's called, it's changed the last few years, but a multi-tiered system of student support. So MTSS. More acronyms in schools, by the way. So education people get ready for acronyms overload, and they change every other year depending on what program we want to pay to do. But so when I'm doing school counseling, I'm more than just an individual counselor. So I am looking at tier 1, which is universal. So I'm going into classrooms, I'm hitting everybody. There are just certain skills that every kid can benefit from: social skills, friendship skills, academic skills, resiliency skills, mindfulness skills. Like every kid can benefit on some level. Then when we talk about tier 2 interventions, that's a lot of small group work, deficits in social skills, or even learning, whatever. So a lot of that for me was small group counseling or building on certain skill sets. And then you have tier 3, which is individual counseling. And in a school counseling setting, I'm only going to do individual counseling, like therapy, 4 to 6 times. If after 4 to 6 sessions on this issue, I'm then going to refer them out, because that is not my primary job. My primary job is that multi-tiered system. And nothing's worse than a kid with severe anxiety, and every Wednesday we're going to meet and we're going to do that throughout the school year. But, oh, what about breaks? Oh, what about summer? Oh, what about the crisis that I have to go address? And now I've left them high and dry. So that to me was always very important. If after 4 to 6 sessions with me, we weren't seeing the progress that we needed, I'm going to refer them out, because they need a 50-minute, 1-hour consistent session. And that is, what that person's dedicated to. Because as a school counselor, it's like being on call for 7.5 hours of the day. And what I did is everybody, from the cooks to the secretary to the teachers to the principals, all had my daily schedule. They knew what classroom I was in, and if there was a crisis, which is crisis counseling is also in that, there would be a phone call to that room. And it was just great because the teachers were so understanding, because tomorrow it might be them calling me in a different room to come help. So that's like the school life. And then for counselors that come in and do school-based therapy, it's really just like that individual therapist. They 10 to 10:50 is their time. They don't have to be pulled away, and they'll sit in on our like what outside agencies call MDTs, we call SATs or 504 IEPs. But they'll be part of it. They'll be part of the consultation. I've called many school-based therapists or outpatient therapists and like, what can we piggyback on? What can we work on? Because we have to have that continuity of care. So I think in my experience from doing private practice to doing school counseling, private practice is so lovely and nice and focused. Not easier, just focus more. School counselors, it's a little bit of everything, which is also fun though, because you get to kind of, when the heavy stuff is heavy, I'm going to go down to Miss Heron's room and we're going to do a kindergarten dance, and it's going to be fun and light and mindful, and we can meditate afterwards. And so it was a nice balance. But that to me is the big difference. But with education, just you've got to look at what you're thinking about and make sure requirements are fulfilled.
Thank you. And I should also point out to all of you who are panelists, because the students know this, I'm a researcher by training, but my first adjuncting job was in a KCREP accredited program, but I was teaching content. So all of my very few skills that I have, I actually learned from my students when I would ask them, okay, you've had skills classes. Now, how does that relate to Piaget? And that's how I learned my skills, by asking my students, who were often at that point older than I was, what am I supposed to do and what are you supposed to say in this moment? So I know enough about graduate school to kind of be dangerous. So I even said to the students in the chat, you know, I could answer that, but they'll give you a better answer. So thank you for that much better answer. Okay, so then the next question was, how does one become a forensic interviewer? Sorry. And yeah, thank you.
Okay. One, you have to be either in a law enforcement field, human service field, which might be the Child Protective Services, or working with a child advocacy center. And then there is a 40-hour, and now I'm guessing it's probably a Zoom now that the pandemic's hit. But when I went through the initial training, it's a 40-hour comprehensive training program that you go through, that's accredited through the state of West Virginia and through National Children's Alliance. There's about 5 models across the United States that are pretty readily available and recognized. Different states use different models. The model that we use in West Virginia is called Child First. There's variances of the different models. Some are more evidence-based. They're almost robotic in their approach. I've been to extended trainings and have had exposure to a majority of the other ones, and I kind of have blended a little bit of what I've learned from all of those into our Child First. But the short answer is, you have to be able to go through this initial training, and you have to be able to pass not only the work that you do for homework, take the test, but you have to be able to do a forensic interview or multiple forensic interviews in a testing environment as well. And then after you're accredited or certified, then you have to maintain that certification through one of the entities. It could be the West Virginia Child Advocacy Network or the National Children's Alliance, but you have to do peer reviews a minimum of 2 times per year, participate in about 8 hours of training to maintain that certification. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. And I was gonna have a follow-up question, but I forget what it was, so, oh well. Yeah, okay. And then somebody else asked, what are some of the differences between master's level practitioners and PhD level practitioners? And for somebody who eventually thinks that they'll eventually get a PhD? Any words of advice or ideas?
So basically my personal views on it, like it depends on really what you want to do. Like if you're looking to go back to back, because WZU does have a program where you can get your master's while you're working towards your PhD. So that's something that would be helpful, I think. And then as far as it goes, I mean, you can get licensure without some of the other things like social work backgrounds and things. You can be provisional and you can hold a provisional license for a while. So there's opportunities to have that without having completed a graduate program.
Anybody else have anything to add?
I might want to, I just want to mention there are going to be advantages both ways. There are advantages to gaining experience, a little bit of experience prior to going into a doc program when you're in an applied area, okay? So to the point, counseling psychology programs typically actually prefer that individuals have some experience before they go on into completing their doctoral program. It gives them some wisdom, some maturity, and experience that's really going to help them just in terms of tackle the curriculum and at that doctoral level. So oftentimes in those applied areas, it's not necessarily a bad idea to maybe get a little experience first before rushing. No, I don't want to say rushing into a doc program, but again, remember, we do applied work. So you gain experience from life. You gain experience from being out there doing something, and then you bring that into your learning environment. So, you know, a lot of people prefer it that way. It depends. It depends. You know, there are a lot of the doc programs work really hard to give people, you know, a lot of internship experiences, which, you know, you're going to get that anyway, at least, you know, on some level, but where they try to get people out early into those situations. But it's not a bad idea to gain some experience in whatever way you do.
Thank you.
How about one more question, and we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Okay. In that case, actually, can I ask 3 questions? They have a lot of good questions. What can I say? Okay, so question number 1. Do any of you have other backgrounds in addition to psych? Like specifically, it was asked about coaching or nursing or teaching. Or were you all just straight psych majors? Okay, I guess you were all straight psych majors.
Okay, Dr. Slaughter, this may be helpful to the students out there. A number of years ago, you actually were required to have a teaching degree before you could become a school counselor.
That's true. Yeah.
And sometimes education programs, I mean, I've heard even not that, you know, kind of recent, where sometimes faculty may kind of confuse that you do not have to have an education degree to become a school counselor or a school psychologist. Okay, you don't. Now, I recommend, if anybody's interested in school psych at that master's level, to take some education, or I mean, school counseling or school anything in a counseling psych related kind of way, to take some education courses, special education, an intro to special ed, an intro to education. Those classes can be vital because Kyra and Heather, you all know, and you certainly know that being respected, counselors need to kind of earn some respect when they go into those school environments, and you are not one of them as an educator. So having an understanding of education in that process can be very, very helpful. on giving you that in that you are so going to need to be successful as a school person.
And for those of you who are getting extra credit because of Psych 3330, the lifespan developmental class, I will point out that your book did talk about how to teach reading, because your book is also a book that is used by education majors in their developmental psych classes. So it is in there. With you all, I don't teach it. And when I'm in the seat, I just say, yeah, pay attention in case you think you want to be a school counselor. But yeah, having some basic knowledge of ed psych does help, and what teachers actually go through and things like that. The next big question was, several of you have said you've had kids or are currently raising kids. How does your work impact your parenting, and how does your parenting impact your work? Jamie, your hand was up first.
So for me, with Child Protective Services, we take a very strengths-based approach. We talk a lot about empowerment, and kids don't have power, right? But if you give them choices, that gives them power. So I've learned a lot with my kids is they like power. They like, and instead of engaging in a power struggle with my children, I give them opportunities for that power by empowering them to make certain choices that I'm okay with. So they don't quite recognize, mom is still in control, but I'm being given some power here. So for me, it's actually been really helpful to kind of learn those techniques that I would use in the homes with my clients, because now I can take them home and use them. And it's actually benefited my relationship, especially with my little. So it's been pretty cool.
Cool. Heather?
So I have a pretty unique experience because my dad is a counselor. So I was raised by a counselor, which I definitely appreciated. Now looking back and going, oh, that's what he was doing. And so I think many moons ago, I had a professor at WVU who said something, and it really resonated, Dr. Tunick. And he said, if you're going to be a counselor, whatever area, age range, population, it's a lifestyle. And I held on to that because it really is. If you learn some of those foundations, and it doesn't mean life's easy or perfect. It just means when something's thrown at me, I have a set of skills that I have learned. And it's not just in a counseling realm, it's in life. And so I really took that to heart, and I was lucky because I think I had some of that ingrained in my upbringing because of my dad. But I learned that if I'm going to teach this, if I'm going to help people with this, I better be the first one using it. And if it's part of my life, if it's every day, if it's ingrained, it was just natural as a parent. And it's great because my son, it can be anxious. He can get worked up. He's analytical. He overthinks. And there were many times where we had to sit down, and from early on, and from appropriate body names. And I worked at the industrial home for youth. We had a sex offender unit, and I had worked 3 years in the profession before I became pregnant. And the kids on the sex offender unit, because they were adolescents, the adolescents on the sex offender unit, I asked them, what would you teach somebody to prevent this? And their insight astounded me and what they were willing to share. And so many of the youth said, calling a body part by a fun, goofy name because somebody else is too embarrassed to say it. So from day one, my son used appropriate biological body part names. And twofold, it was fun to watch him freak other people out. I did enjoy that. But he needed a language that was effective and correct. So we've always done that. But I think if you really study your craft and you live it day to day, it just becomes part of your parenting. And it's so nice because I look at other people, it's hard, but it's not that hard. Love them, support them, let them be who they are unconditionally in a safe way. I'm not gonna let him jump off the roof just to see, but who he is wonderful. And it's different. And if it's different from me, I want to learn about it. And I use that in elementary school every day. when a kid knew something I didn't, I'm like, I don't know that, tell me more. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, what is Fortnite? I had no idea. And then that helped me with my son, because I'd be like, hey, you on the purple level yet? Purple cloud come through. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I know things. So I think just, it's a lifestyle, clinically, school, whatever, live your life to that, and everything else just becomes part of it.
Thank you. And Jackie, I think you had wanted to raise your hand too.
Yeah, I just had something funny. A couple of weeks ago, so I have a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old, and a couple of weeks ago, I came downstairs and they're doing remote schooling from home through until the end of the year. And the 12-year-old had written a behavior chart for the 6-year-old in regards to doing her homework and time on the iPad. So I would say that exactly what Heather said, it is definitely a lifestyle. So I just thought I'd share that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did I miss anybody else's hands up and stories about kids? Like Dr. Ann said, I'm a developmentalist, so I love this stuff. And the last question, which kind of sums things up, was, and I think you may have touched on this, but it's still a nice way to wrap things up. Since several of you have said that you have worked with a wide age range of people, what do you think are some of the other main differences between working with kids versus adults? Kayla?
So I think that one of the main differences that sometimes kids don't have any filter, like they don't even know what they're telling you, is like really intense. I had a foster kid who was severely like abused and neglected, just telling me all this stuff that happened, like no emotion, like really had no idea that this was like really bad stuff. Like this is not something that happens in everybody's home. So I think kids are kind of unfiltered and raw at times. Like they're very forthcoming with things. Adults tend to be better, like, yeah, that, agreeing, and then they like, forget about all of that once they get home. I think kids tend to listen a little bit better and even take things even when you think they're not listening, and then you see them doing it and you're like, wait, I did not think you were paying attention to that at all. I had a really good moment whenever I had an 8-year-old tell like my husband, who's the treatment coordinator, things I taught her in therapy, and I was like, what? So some of those things really surprised me with how much they're actually paying attention, even when they seem like they're not.
Anybody else?
I mean, I think the most important thing to be able to do with kids, and it's not that you don't have to do it with an adult, but when you're an adult working with an adult, you're in the same developmental part of your life, right? Like, so one thing that you have to do with kids, if you want them to take you seriously, to listen to you, to have a connection with you, you have to remember what it was like when you were 6 years old. And yes, when my Barbie's head flipped off too, it was the end of the world for that moment. And it was, because that was mine. I loved it. And now it's in 2 pieces, and that's not correct. And so like, you have to go there with a kid. And you have to with an adult too, but you're already there. So it's a little, developmentally, you're with them. So it's, I'll say, easier for me. But when you go back and you think 3 to even for me working with young adults, 25 now, I have to remember what that was like. And that in that moment, yeah, looking back, and that wasn't a big deal. In the moment, at 14, when my best friend didn't call, when she said she was going to call, why does she hate me? What's wrong with me? That's awful. They'll never talk to me again. That's traumatic. That's scary. That's life altering in that moment. So I think with kids and adolescents, that to me, I had to remember, oh yeah, at 10, when I was sick and had to miss basketball practice, I was very upset. And it was the end of the world in that moment. So that validation and going back in your own mind to what it was like, I think is the biggest difference and the best thing you can do.
So kind of piggybacking off what others have said, it is important to remember that children view things a lot differently than adults do. And I'll give an example. I have an 8-year-old currently that one of the things I do with all my clients, if they suffer from anxiety or just anything that's overwhelming, like stress or anything like that, is I help them create a safe place. And it seems like for adults, that's a room, that's a beach, that's like something that like, okay, like they've been there before. But this little 8-year-old, his safe place is a tank. And like it has all these supernatural things to it, like lasers that would zap things that aren't really there, like people's sound waves, like you can't actually see them, but he's like, if people are getting too loud, I can zap those and really get them to be quiet and like kind of nothing's gonna break through that barrier for him. So, and like when he was done drawing his tank out, I had him explain it to mom, and mom was like, you wanted it to be a tank? And he's like, I'm a superhero in that tank because it's super strong. So really adapting to that and letting him express himself in that moment. I think it reminded mom, it's like, you know, for him, that is his safe place. Whereas like for her, it may be something completely different. So it is really unique to see.
Thank you. And we just had a special guest show up. So say hi.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Can you hear me? Huh?
It's good to see you, Dr. Joe.
Good to see you, everyone.
This is the child and adolescent group.
Sorry I'm late.
This is the child and adolescent group. And again, Dr. Joe, we started out together very much, in many respects, professionally in the school system. He was a school psychologist. And I started out because I needed teaching experience to become a school counselor. And then I piloted the first school, our school elementary program. And then we've private practiced, we've taught at Fairmont State. So us being in the pandemic together, working in the same office, nothing new about that for us. And, Dr. Slody, can I go ahead and kind of wrap up here with the group?
That was all of our questions.
Okay. One thing that I want to do, first of all, I hope that this was beneficial for the student audience out there. I do want to remind you all that tomorrow, beginning promptly at 4:30 for the students, we will have the adult-based professionals, and we have some people here. I think Jamie, are you coming back? I'm not sure. I know you're coming back. Oh no, you're coming back for the Thursday one, right? Jen, I think you're coming back tomorrow, right? Jen, or is it for graduate school, right?
I'll be here Thursday. I can't make it tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So I'll make sure I take you off the list. Anyone else coming back? Mike, I have you down for the adult-based, or is that correct or not? I didn't think so. Okay. I'll make sure.
Mike, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
I'll make sure that I take you off on that. Anyone? Okay, now the graduate school panel, that's where we're going to be talking about all those graduate experiences and giving some guidance on that for the students. So I have a couple of you coming back for that. If there's anyone who's interested in, being at that one, if you reconsider and you kind of want to be in on that, just email me and let me know, but do that soon so I can let Greg know that. And hopefully we'll be able to give you the Zoom link for that if you would like to join us on Thursday. I can't think of anything else on that other than this is always a joy. We've had one prior alumni showcase. My goal was that we were hoping to do this face-to-face, but again, with the pandemic, that couldn't happen. But let me tell you, this has been wonderful for me. And I hope this has been a good experience for the panel, you panel people. And remember, you know, you have my email if you need me, if anything, and you do. But I know we communicate. But if you ever need me, I'm around, and so is he. All right. So
Miss seeing people.
Yeah, we really do miss seeing you all. And take care. Okay. Bye bye.